My daughter's fiancé forbade me from attending their wedding, saying contemptuously, "There's no place for beggars like you at our celebration." My daughter silently supported him, choosing money over family. But when my Rolls-Royce pulled up, and he found out about my real fortune, 17 million, their reaction was priceless. You won't believe what happened next. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. And frankly, old man, beggars like you have no place at our wedding. This will be an elite event, and you'll just ruin the atmosphere. The crystal chandelier above our table seemed to dim as Victor's words hit me. My hands trembled against the white tablecloth, and I felt every eye in the oakwood grill turn toward us. The wealthy diners at neighboring tables leaned closer, their whispers creating a buzz of anticipation. Victor sat there in his $3,000 suit, one arm draped possessively around my daughter's shoulders. His gold watch caught the light as he gestured dismissively at my worn button-down shirt and simple khakis. I'd driven 90 minutes through Manhattan traffic to meet this man, hoping to connect with the person Loretta claimed to love. "Dad." Loretta's voice was barely a whisper. She wore a dress I'd never seen before. Designer, expensive, transforming her into someone I hardly recognized. Her manicured fingers fidgeted with the enormous diamond on her ring finger. "Maybe Victor has a point." Those words hit harder than his insults ever could. "This will be a very refined celebration," she continued, not meeting my eyes. "The guest list is, well, it's mostly Victor's business associates and their families, people from a certain level of society." I stared at my daughter, the little girl who used to defend me when other kids made fun of our modest car, who'd proudly introduce me as the smartest daddy in the world. Now she couldn't even look at me while agreeing that I wasn't good enough for her wedding. Victor snapped his fingers at a passing waiter. "Another bottle of the Dom Reol," he commanded, then turned back to me with a smirk. "You understand, don't you? This isn't personal. It's just business. Image matters in my world." The waiter hurried away, probably grateful to escape the tension. I noticed how the restaurant staff avoided our table now. Their professional smiles strained when they caught fragments of the conversation. "Daddy, please don't make this harder than it has to be," Loretta pleaded, finally meeting my gaze, but her eyes held no warmth, only embarrassment. Embarrassment of me. I felt the floor drop away beneath my chair. The ringing in my ears grew louder as I processed what was happening. My own daughter, the child I'd raised alone after Mary died, the girl I'd worked double shifts to buy school clothes for, was choosing this arrogant stranger over her father. "I understand," I said quietly, my voice somehow steady despite the earthquake inside my chest. "I wish you both happiness." I folded my napkin carefully, placed it beside my untouched wine glass, and stood. My movements felt mechanical, disconnected from the storm raging inside me. The couple at the table behind us had stopped pretending to eat, watching our family drama unfold like dinner theater. As I walked toward the exit, Victor's voice carried across the restaurant. "See how easy that was? Sometimes you just have to be direct with people like that." The doorman held the heavy glass door open, his face carefully neutral. Behind me, I heard Loretta's nervous laugh, forced, artificial, nothing like the genuine joy I remembered from her childhood. The cool spring air hit my face as I stepped onto the sidewalk, but it did nothing to cool the burning shame spreading through my chest. My hands shook so violently, I couldn't get the key into the ignition. I sat in my old pickup truck in the restaurant's parking lot, watching through the large windows as Victor and Loretta returned to their meal. She was animated now, gesturing with her wineglass while he nodded approvingly. They looked relieved, like they'd just solved an unpleasant problem. The engine finally turned over with its familiar rumble. I pulled out of the lot and merged into Manhattan traffic, the city's glittering wealth mocking me through my windshield. Ferrari after Mercedes after BMW surrounded my weathered truck, their drivers probably wondering what poor fool was driving such a relic through their sophisticated world. I drove mechanically, muscle memory guiding me toward I-95 North. The radio played some classical piece I didn't recognize, but I couldn't focus on the music. Victor's words kept replaying. Beggars like you, people like that. But worse than his cruelty was the realization dawning on me. This hadn't been spontaneous. He'd planned this humiliation, probably coached Loretta on what to say. The Bronx gave way to Westchester County, familiar exit signs flashing past. Usually this drive comforted me, leaving the city's chaos for Connecticut's quiet suburbs. Tonight, each mile felt like traveling deeper into isolation. At a rest stop near White Plains, my hands started shaking again. I pulled over under the harsh fluorescent lights, the smell of gasoline and stale coffee filling my nostrils. A few truckers moved between the pumps, their conversations a low murmur in the night air. I pulled out my wallet and found the photo I'd carried for 15 years. Mary and me at Loretta's college graduation. We looked so proud, so hopeful. Mary's arm was around our daughter, while Loretta grinned at the camera, her diploma clutched in both hands. "Mary, what did I do wrong?" I whispered to the creased photo. "Where did I lose our daughter?" The memory hit me like a physical blow. Loretta, at 8 years old, crying because kids at school called our car ugly. I'd worked 3 extra shifts that month to buy her new school clothes, determined she'd never feel ashamed again. And Mary, always Mary, kneeling beside Loretta's bed. "Family stands together, sweetheart. Money comes and goes, but family is forever." But tonight, Loretta had chosen money. She'd looked at Victor's wealth and decided that it was worth more than 30 years of her father's love. The little girl who used to defend me had become a woman ashamed of where she came from. Another memory surfaced last Christmas, when Loretta visited for just 2 hours before rushing back to the city. She'd seemed distracted, checking her phone constantly, making excuses about important people she needed to see. I'd thought it was just youth, the natural progression of a daughter building her own life. Now I understood she'd been pulling away for months, maybe years, embarrassed by my modest house, my old truck, my simple clothes. Victor hadn't corrupted her. He'd simply given her permission to express what she'd been feeling all along. Back on the highway, approaching the Stamford exit, I felt something shift inside me. The initial shock was crystallizing into something colder, more purposeful. 30 years I'd given everything to that child. 30 years of sacrifice, of putting her needs above my own, of building a future for her, and she'd thrown it all away without hesitation, choosing his side the moment he demanded it. The hurt was still there, a constant ache behind my ribs. But alongside it, something else was growing. A quiet, determined anger that surprised me with its clarity. If Loretta wanted to judge people by their money, perhaps it was time she learned exactly how much money was involved. I hadn't slept. Dawn found me still pacing my kitchen, the coffee maker gurgling as it brewed my 3rd pot of the night. The house felt different somehow, quieter, emptier. Family photos lined the mantel above my fireplace. Mary and me on our wedding day. Loretta's first steps, birthday parties, graduations, Moments when we'd been happy, when money had never mattered. But now, Loretta had chosen money over family. If that's how she wanted to measure worth, then perhaps it was time she learned what real money looked like. I walked down the wooden stairs to my basement, each step creaking under my weight. The morning sun slanted through small windows, illuminating dust motes floating in the air. Most of the basement served as my workshop, tools hanging neatly on pegboards, a workbench scattered with projects I'd been meaning to finish. Behind the workbench, hidden under an old tarp, sat the safe. I'd bought it in 1995, the same year I made my first real investment. My fingers found the combination automatically. Mary's birthday, then Loretta's. The heavy door swung open with a soft click. Inside, organized in manila folders, lay my real secret. Stock certificates, investment documents, bank statements, the paper trail of decisions that had seemed crazy at the time, but proved brilliantly pre-oriented. The Apple folder came first. I pulled out the certificate dated September 15th, 1995, 1,000 shares at $50 each. My entire life savings at the time invested in a computer company most people thought was doomed. My engineering colleagues had laughed, called it throwing money away. $50,000 down the drain, my boss had said. You could have bought a nice car with that money. Instead, I'd bought Apple stock 3 months before they announced the return of Steve Jobs. The Tesla folder was thicker. My second major gamble made in 2003 when Elon Musk was just another Silicon Valley dreamer with an impossible idea about electric cars. Another $50,000 invested when Tesla was barely more than a concept and a business plan. I fired up my old laptop and checked the current stock prices. The numbers glowed on the screen, almost surreal in their magnitude. Apple, 247th house per share. Tesla, 189 per share. With stock splits and dividend reinvestments over the years, my simple investments had multiplied beyond anything I dared to imagine. The calculations were staggering. My Apple investment was now worth $12 million. Tesla had grown to $4 million. Various other tech investments I'd made over the years added another $1 million to the total. $17 million hidden in my basement, while my daughter called me a beggar. I pulled out another folder, the one that hurt the most to see. Draft documents for Loretta's wedding gift, prepared 3 months ago by my attorney. A trust fund worth $10 million, structured to provide for her future while encouraging education and charitable giving. I'd planned to surprise her with it as my wedding speech, securing her financial future forever. The cruel irony was breathtaking. She'd humiliated me for being poor while sitting across from a man worth more than everyone in that restaurant combined. She'd chosen Victor's flashy wealth over her father's quiet abundance. I reached for my phone and dialed James Thompson, my broker for the past 15 years. Leland? James sounded surprised. You never call during business hours. Is everything all right? Everything's fine, James. I need to make some changes to my will, specifically to Loretta's inheritance. Changes? But I thought, Leland, what's happened? Let's just say circumstances have changed. I want to revise the trust fund arrangements. As we talked through the details, I felt a strange satisfaction building. Victor wanted to play games with money, judge people by their bank accounts, exclude those he deemed unworthy. Perfect. I could play that game too, and unlike Victor, I actually had the resources to make it interesting. I carefully returned all the documents to the safe and spun the combination lock. Walking back upstairs, I caught myself smiling for the first time since last night. Not a warm smile, but something colder, more calculating. If Loretta wanted to learn about real money, about actual power, I was more than happy to provide that education. The phone rang just as I reached the kitchen, its shrill sound cutting through the morning quiet. The newspaper lay folded beside my breakfast plate, but I couldn't focus on the headlines. Yesterday's hurt had crystallized into something harder, more useful. My eggs grew cold as I sat at my small kitchen table, morning sunlight streaming through windows that needed new curtains. The chipped coffee mug in my hands felt familiar, comforting in its simplicity. The phone rang, cutting through the peaceful morning silence like a blade. Loretta's name appeared on the caller ID. I let it ring twice more before answering, my voice carefully controlled. "Hello, daughter. Good morning, Daddy." Her tone was artificially sweet, dripping with false warmth. "How are you feeling today?" "Fine. What do you need?" A pause. Then the manipulation began in earnest. "Well, I was hoping we could talk about the wedding. There are some details Victor and I need to finalize." And she trailed off, waiting for me to fill the silence. I didn't. "The thing is, Daddy, we've run into a small financial situation. The florist wants their payment up front, and the decorator needs a substantial deposit by Friday. Victor's money is temporarily tied up in some important investment opportunities." "How much?" $30,000. She said it casually, as if discussing the weather. "I know it sounds like a lot, but everyone else's parents are contributing significantly. I just thought you'd want to help make my special day perfect." The audacity took my breath away. Yesterday I was a beggar, unfit for her wedding. Today she needed my money. "That's interesting," I said slowly. "Yesterday I was too poor to attend your wedding. Today you're asking me for $30,000. Daddy, that's completely different." Her voice sharpened. "This is about the wedding itself, not about social considerations." "Social considerations." I repeated the phrase, tasting its bitterness. "I see. Just give me the money. Why are you being so difficult about this?" The mask slipped completely now, revealing the entitled woman she'd become. "It's not like you have anything else to spend it on in that little house." "No." "What do you mean, no?" "I mean no, Loretta. Ask Victor's wealthy friends. Ask his important business associates. I'm sure they'd be happy to help with your social considerations. You're being ridiculous. I'm your daughter." "Yes," I said quietly. "You are. And yesterday you made it very clear what that means to you." The line went silent for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was cold, calculating. "Fine. Don't help. But don't expect any relationship with me after this." Victor says, "I don't need people in my life who won't support my happiness." Goodbye, Loretta. I hung up before she could respond. The kitchen fell silent again, but it felt different now. Emptier. I sat, staring at the phone, processing what had just happened. $30,000, more money than most people made in a year, requested as casually as borrowing $20 for lunch. She had no shame, no recognition of yesterday's cruelty. In her mind, the wedding justified everything, erased all her betrayals. I pulled out my calendar and studied the date circled in red, June 15th, 3 weeks away. Time enough to teach her what real money looked like. 3 weeks passed slowly. I'd spent the time researching, planning, making quiet phone calls to my broker. Every detail needed to be perfect for what I had in mind. Saturday afternoon found me at the Corner Cafe in downtown Stamford, sitting at an outdoor table under the spring sunshine. I'd chosen this spot deliberately. Emily often came here on weekends to grade papers and plan lessons. My newspaper served as a prop while I waited, a cup of coffee growing cold in front of me. She appeared right on schedule, laptop bag slung over her shoulder, looking cheerful and completely unsuspecting. "Mr. Watkins." Her face lit up with genuine pleasure. What a wonderful surprise. Are you here planning wedding surprises, too? Perfect. She'd given me the opening I needed. Emily, how lovely to see you. Please sit down. I gestured to the empty chair across from me. Wedding surprises? She settled in eagerly, practically glowing with excitement. Oh, I probably shouldn't say anything, but since you're Loretta's father, I've been helping with some of the final details. June 15th is coming up so fast. Indeed it is. I leaned forward with apparent fatherly interest. Tell me about this venue. Loretta mentioned something about Greenwich, the grand estate. It's absolutely gorgeous. Victor really knows how to pick locations. 200 guests. Can you imagine? The catering alone is costing $150 per person. She shook her head in amazement. I've never seen anything so elegant. 200 guests, $30,000 for catering. The numbers were staggering, yet Loretta had begged me for money, as if they were struggling. What time does everything begin? I asked, maintaining my interested father facade. Ceremony starts at 4 in the afternoon. Then cocktails in the garden, dinner at 7 and dancing until midnight. There's even valet parking. Victor insisted on it. He said his business associates expect a certain level of service. How thoughtful of him. The words tasted bitter, but Emily didn't notice my tone. Loretta seems a bit stressed about everything being perfect. Emily continued, unconsciously providing more intelligence. Victor has very specific ideas about how everything should look. The flowers, the music, even the seating arrangements. Everything has to meet his standards. I nodded sympathetically. It sounds like quite an undertaking. I'd love to do something special for them, but I want it to be a surprise. You won't mention our conversation, will you? Of course not. Emily beamed. I love surprises. What are you thinking? Oh, I'm still working out the details, but knowing the timeline helps enormously. We chatted for another 20 minutes. 20 minutes, Emily innocently providing the complete briefing on wedding logistics, arrival procedures, guest parking arrangements, even the security details Victor had insisted upon. She was a treasure trove of information. Completely unaware that she was helping me plan anything other than a touching father's surprise. When she finally left, promising again to keep our conversation secret, I remained at the table. I pulled out a small notebook and began writing down every detail she'd provided. At the bottom of the page, I wrote, Luxury Car Dealerships, Manhattan. It was time for the next phase of my plan. The taxi dropped me at the corner of 5th Avenue and 57th Street, where luxury motors occupied prime Manhattan real estate. Through the gleaming windows, I could see rows of cars that cost more than most people's houses. Rolls-Royce, Bentley, Aston Martin, vehicles for those who never worried about money. I dressed deliberately in my usual outfit, khakis, worn jacket, simple shoes. The leather portfolio in my hand was the only hint that this visit might be more than window shopping. The showroom's marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Well-dressed salespeople moved between customers, their practiced eyes instantly assessing each person's worth. When I walked in, those eyes dismissed me immediately. I approached the centerpiece of the display, a midnight blue Rolls-Royce Phantom, its chrome gleaming under the spotlights. The price placard read $547,000. Sir, a young salesman approached reluctantly. Are you sure you're in the right place? I need to purchase your finest Rolls-Royce Phantom, I said calmly. He actually laughed. Sir, these vehicles start at $500,000. Perhaps I could show you something more suitable to your budget. Other customers were beginning to notice the interaction. I could feel their amused glances, hear the whispered comments about the confused old man who'd wandered into the wrong establishment. I opened my portfolio and withdrew a certified bank check for $500,000, placing it gently on the glass counter between us. The change was instantaneous. The salesman's condescending smirk vanished, replaced by wide-eyed shock. Within seconds, a manager appeared, then another, all suddenly very interested in helping me. "I'm so incredibly sorry, Mr. Watkins." The manager's apologies tumbled over each other. "Please let me show you our premium models personally." For the next hour, I was treated like royalty. Every feature was demonstrated, every option explained in detail. I chose quickly and decisively. Midnight blue exterior, cream leather interior, all available technology packages. The staff watched in amazement as I made selections worth more than their annual salaries without hesitation. "We also offer premium chauffeur services," the manager mentioned as we finalized paperwork. "Our best driver is Marcus Thompson, former military, impeccable record, complete discretion guaranteed." Marcus appeared within minutes, tall, professional, wearing a perfectly pressed uniform. His handshake was firm. His manner respectfully attentive. "It would be an honor to work with you, Mr. Watkins," he said after I'd explained my basic requirements. "When would you need the service?" "June 15th, a wedding in Greenwich." "The details are somewhat unconventional. I understand completely, sir. Discretion and professionalism are my specialties." As I signed the final documents, I glanced at my calendar. June 15th was circled in red, now just 2 weeks away. Everything was falling into place perfectly. The same people who dismissed me an hour ago now practically bowed as I left, their respect purchased with a single check. Soon Loretta and Victor would learn the same lesson about assumptions and appearances. The transformation was only beginning. 3 weeks ago, I wouldn't have dared enter a place like Brooks Brothers. The flagship store on Madison Avenue gleamed like a temple to wealth, its polished windows displaying suits that cost more than most people's monthly salary. But today, stepping out of the taxi onto the bustling sidewalk, I carried myself differently. The success at the Rolls-Royce dealership had changed something fundamental inside me. The doorman nodded respectfully as I entered the elegant showroom. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over displays of Italian wool and Egyptian cotton, while well-dressed consultants moved between clients with practiced efficiency. "Good afternoon, sir. How may I assist you today?" The consultant was professionally groomed, his own suit a perfect advertisement for the store's quality. "I need a complete transformation," I said simply. "Custom tailoring, accessories, everything. I have an important event in 3 weeks. Excellent. Let's begin with measurements and discuss what image you'd like to project." For the next 2 hours, I was treated to an education in luxury. The consultant explained thread counts, fabric weights, and construction techniques while taking precise measurements. We selected a deep charcoal gray Italian wool, so fine it felt like silk beneath my fingers. "I need to look like a millionaire," I told him, as we reviewed style options. "This suit will achieve exactly that, Mr. Watkins," he replied without hesitation. "Classic cut, impeccable construction, perfect fit. You'll command respect the moment you enter a room." We moved to accessories. A Rolex dot just worth $15,000, its gold and steel gleaming under the showroom lights. Egyptian cotton shirts. A silk tie with subtle burgundy threading. Italian leather shoes crafted by hand in Florence. Each piece cost more than my old monthly budget, but together they created something powerful. The preliminary fitting revealed a man I barely recognized. The suit transformed my posture, my bearing, my entire presence. In the mirror, I no longer saw a modest retiree from Connecticut. I saw wealth, authority, confidence. "We'll have everything ready by June 12th, the consultant promised, as I wrote another substantial check. "Final fitting on the 13th, and you'll be perfectly prepared for your event." Walking back onto Madison Avenue, I caught my reflection in the store window. Even in my old clothes, something had changed. The way I held my shoulders, the steadiness of my gaze, the slight smile playing at my lips. June 15th was exactly 3 weeks away. Time to show them who I really was. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Marcus's number. There were final arrangements to discuss, timing to coordinate, details to perfect. The transformation was nearly complete. Dawn broke clear and bright on June 15th, painting my modest bedroom in golden light. I'd slept better than I had in months, waking naturally at 6 without an alarm. Today felt different, charged with possibility, heavy with destiny. Breakfast was simple: eggs, toast, black coffee in my familiar chipped mug. But I ate with purpose, savoring what might be the last meal in my old life. By tomorrow, everything would be different. The wedding invitation that was never sent lay on my kitchen table. Elegant script, announcing the union of Loretta Watkins and Victor Harrove at 4 o'clock. I had other plans for 4 o'clock. The shower water ran hot and steady as I prepared for my final performance. Every detail mattered now: the precision of my shave, the careful arrangement of my hair, the methodical process of transformation. The Brooks Brothers suit hung perfectly in my closet, still wrapped in protective covering. Lifting it free, I marveled again at the quality. The fabric flowed like liquid silver, the construction flawless in every detail. When I slipped the jacket over my shoulders, it fit like it had been sculpted to my body. The Rolex felt substantial on my wrist, its weight a constant reminder of the power I now wielded. Italian leather shoes, silk tie, gold cufflinks, each element combining to create an image of quiet wealth and unshakable confidence. I stood before my bedroom mirror, studying the complete transformation. The man looking back bore little resemblance to the humble retiree who'd been humiliated 3 months ago. This was a millionaire, a force to be reckoned with, someone who commanded respect and attention. From my dresser, I picked up the small stack of note cards containing my speech. I'd practiced the words countless times, but today they felt electric with possibility. $17 million. The phrase would change everything. Mary's photograph smiled at me from the nightstand, her eyes warm with the love I remembered. "I hope you understand what I have to do," I whispered to her image. "They need to learn that family matters more than money." At exactly 2:30, the deep rumble of the Rolls-Royce engine announced Marcus's arrival. Through my front window, I watched neighbors emerge from their modest homes to stare at the luxury vehicle parked in my driveway. The contrast was striking. A $500,000 car outside a house worth less than $200,000. Marcus stood beside the open rear door, immaculate in his chauffeur's uniform. "Good afternoon, Mr. Watkins. You look impeccable." "Thank you, Marcus. Today will be very interesting indeed." I settled into the cream leather interior, the door closing with a satisfying thunk that spoke of German engineering and British craftsmanship. As we pulled away from my quiet street, I caught one last glimpse of the modest house where I'd lived since Mary died. By evening, I would never need to pretend to be poor again. The grand estate appeared through the Rolls-Royce's tinted windows like something from a fairy tale. Manicured gardens stretched across rolling hills punctuated by marble fountains and classical statuary. The main building rose 3 stories in Georgian splendor, its columns and terraces declaring wealth in every architectural detail. "Impressive venue," Marcus observed as we approached the circular drive where other luxury vehicles deposited guests. Indeed, Victor certainly knows how to spend money. Bentleys, Lamborghinis, and Mercedes-Benzes lined the valet area, their owners dressed in designer attire that probably cost more than most people's cars. I counted easily 200 guests mingling on the terraces and gardens, their laughter and conversation creating a buzz of refined celebration. Marcus positioned the Rolls-Royce perfectly at the main entrance, directly in line with the guests' sight lines. As he came around to open my door, I caught sight of Loretta and Victor near the garden entrance, greeting arrivals with practiced smiles. They looked happy, confident, completely unaware that their world was about to change. "Shall I wait here, sir?" Marcus asked, as I stepped onto the stone drive. "Yes, I suspect this won't take very long." The moment I emerged from the vehicle, heads began to turn. Conversations paused mid-sentence as 200 wealthy guests tried to process what they were seeing. The Rolls-Royce commanded attention, but my appearance sealed their fascination. "Who is that?" I heard someone whisper. "Look at that car. That's a Phantom. $500,000 at least. Is that Loretta's father? I thought Victor said he was." The whispers spread like ripples across the gathering. I walked with measured confidence toward the reception area, every step calculated for maximum impact. My Rolex caught the afternoon sunlight. My Italian shoes clicked authoritatively on the stone pathway. Loretta spotted me first. Her champagne glass froze halfway to her lips, her face cycling through confusion, recognition, and shock. She grabbed Victor's arm, whispering urgently in his ear. Victor's head snapped up, his confident smile vanishing as he stared at the approaching figure. I could see his mind racing, trying to reconcile the image of the beggar from the restaurant with an obviously wealthy gentleman walking toward him. "Mr. Watkins." Victor's voice cracked slightly as he hurried forward, Loretta stumbling to keep up. We simply forgot to send you an invitation. How wonderful that you could make it anyway." "How considerate of you to remember me now," I replied smoothly, accepting a champagne flute from a passing waiter. "Lovely venue. You have excellent taste." The guests continued staring, their assessment of the wedding party shifting with every second. Wealth attracted wealth, and I could feel their curiosity drawing them closer, eager to understand this intriguing development. Victor struggled to maintain composure while his brain processed the impossible. The man he'd called a beggar had arrived in a Rolls-Royce, wearing clothes worth more than most people's annual salary. I sipped my champagne and checked my Rolex. 3:55. The ceremony would begin in 5 minutes, perfect timing for what came next. The reception flowed seamlessly from ceremony to celebration, guests mingling on the terrace before moving into the ballroom for dinner. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables adorned with white roses and gold accents, while a string quartet provided elegant background music. The atmosphere buzzed with satisfied murmurs about the beautiful ceremony and the mysterious wealthy father who'd arrived in such spectacular fashion. I positioned myself strategically near the head, champagne glass in hand, watching as the evening's program unfolded. Loretta kept glancing in my direction, her smile forced as she tried to process my transformation. Victor maintained his confident facade, but I caught him whispering urgently to his groomsman, probably trying to understand how the beggar had acquired such obvious wealth. The moment I'd waited months for arrived when the wedding coordinator tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin dinner, We have a special toast from the bride's father, Mr. Leland Watkins. Perfect timing. I walked confidently to the microphone stand, feeling every eye in the ballroom focus on me. 200 guests fell silent, their conversations dying as they anticipated the traditional father's blessing. Loretta looked hopeful for the first time all evening, perhaps thinking this would be a normal, touching moment. She was wrong. "Dear guests," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the excellent sound system. "Thank you all for joining us to celebrate my daughter's wedding. This is truly a magnificent venue, and I can see that no expense has been spared to make this day memorable." Polite murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Loretta's shoulders relaxed slightly, while Victor nodded approvingly from his seat. "Some of you may not know me well," I continued, allowing a strategic pause. "I'm Leland Watkins, Loretta's father, the same man some people have described as a beggar." The word hung in the air like a physical thing. Conversation stopped mid-sentence as guests tried to process what they just heard. Near the bridal table, Victor's face went pale. "I hope everyone doesn't mind if I share a little story about family values and the true measure of a person's worth." My hand moved to the inside pocket of my jacket, fingers touching the folded documents I'd brought for this exact moment. Around the ballroom, I noticed several guests discreetly pulling out their phones, sensing that something extraordinary was about to unfold. Loretta's champagne glass trembled in her hand as she stared at me with growing alarm. This wasn't the grateful father's toast she'd expected. "What you don't know about that description," I said, pulling the papers partially from my pocket, "is what these documents represent." Every eye followed my movement. The ballroom had become so quiet, I could hear the gentle clink of crystal glasses and the rustle of expensive fabric as guests leaned forward in anticipation. "Let me tell you exactly what they contained." The papers rustled softly as I unfolded them, the sound amplified by the complete silence that had fallen over the ballroom. 200 faces stared at me with rapt attention. Phones capturing every moment of what they sensed was becoming historic drama. "These documents," I said clearly, my voice carrying to every corner of the elegant room, "represent my investment portfolio. Current value, $17 million. The reaction was immediate and electric. Gasps echoed throughout the ballroom, followed by explosive whispers. "17 million? Did he say million? This is incredible." I held up the brokerage statements, letting the nearest guest see the official letter, head, and numbers. Apple computer stock, purchased in September 995 for $50,000. Tesla stock acquired in 2003 for another $20,000. Both investments be worth the millions. Loretta's champagne glass slipped from her nerveless fingers, shattering on the marble floor. "Dad, please," she whispered, but her voice was lost in the crowd's amazed murmur. "I am not and have never been a beggar," I continued, my tone remaining calm and measured. "I am, however, a father who was publicly humiliated by his daughter's fiancé for the crime of dressing modestly." Victor shot to his feet, his face flushed with panic and rage. "This is ridiculous. You're making a scene at our wedding." But the crowd's attention remained fixed on me, their smartphones recording every word of this unprecedented revelation. "Originally," I said, reaching for another set of documents, "I'd planned a different wedding gift. $10 million in a trust fund established specifically for Loretta's future security." The number hit the room like a physical blow. Loretta's face went white as she processed the magnitude of what I was saying. $10 million, she breathed, the words barely audible, until 3 months ago when my daughter supported her fiancé. The assessment that I was too poor, too embarrassing, too much of a beggar to attend their wedding. The crowd turned as one to stare at Victor and Loretta, their expressions shifting from amazement to judgment. I could see the social calculation happening in real time, wealthy guests reassessing everything they thought they knew about this couple. Instead, I announced producing the final documents with a flourish. My entire $17 million fortune will be donated to educational charities, specifically scholarships for children from modest backgrounds, children who might be dismissed as beggars by people who judge worth by appearance alone. The papers in my hand were signed trust documents, legally binding and irreversible. These were filed yesterday with my attorney. The decision is final. Loretta's wedding dress rustled as she stumbled toward the microphone, her face a mask of horror and disbelief. $10 million. I lost $10 million because of Victor's composure finally shattered completely. "You insane old man!" he shouted, his voice carrying over the crowd's shocked murmurs. "You've destroyed everything. Our future, our plans, our—" But the guests were no longer looking at me with curiosity. They were staring at Victor and Loretta with a mixture of shock and disdain, their phones capturing every moment of the couple's public meltdown. The justice was more complete than I'd ever imagined. "I believe," I said calmly into the microphone, "I've said everything I came to say." I stepped back from the microphone and began my walk toward the ballroom exit, the crowd parting before me like the Red Sea. Every step felt purposeful, dignified, carrying the weight of perfect justice finally achieved. Behind me, I could hear the chaos beginning. Loretta's desperate sobs, Victor's furious shouting, guests' excited whispers as they processed what they just witnessed. "Dad, Dad, please wait." Loretta's voice cracked as she stumbled after me in her elaborate wedding dress, desperation making her voice shrill. "We need to talk about this. We can work something out." I paused and turned, meeting her tear-streaked face with the calm composure of a man who had planned this moment for months. "Daughter, you made your choice 3 months ago when you called me a beggar and supported your fiancé. It's cruelty. Now I've made mine. I'm sorry. I was wrong about everything. Please, can't we discuss this like family?" The word family hung between us, heavy with irony. Around us, 200 guests watched our personal drama unfold, their phones documenting every moment for social media posterity. "Some choices," I said quietly, "have permanent consequences. You chose his money over your father's love. Now you can live with that decision." Behind Loretta, Victor was having his own meltdown, shouting at anyone who would listen. "This is insanity. He's completely lost his mind. You can't take seriously the ravings of a deranged old man." But the wealthy guests who comprised his social circle were backing away from him, their expressions showing exactly what they thought of a man who'd lost $10 million through pure arrogance. I heard one elderly gentleman mutter to his wife, "$17 million? That boy threw away $17 million by treating the father like a beggar." I continued my measured walk toward the exit, Loretta's desperate pleas following me. The ballroom doors opened onto the estate's grand foyer, where Marcus waited beside the Rolls-Royce. "Professional as always. I trust everything went well, sir?" Marcus asked, as he opened the rear door. "Better than I could have hoped," I replied, settling into the cream leather interior. As the Phantom's engine purged to life, I caught one final glimpse through the tinted windows. Loretta stood alone on the estate's marble steps, in her 1000 wedding dress, mascara streaking down her cheeks, as she watched her father and $10 million disappear forever. Victor was surrounded by a cluster of guests, all of them talking animatedly, their body language making clear they were discussing his spectacular fall from grace. The Rolls-Royce glided silently down the estate's tree-lined driveway, carrying me away from the wreckage of the wedding and toward whatever came next. In the distance, I could see guests on the terrace, still animated in discussion about what they'd just witnessed. My phone buzzed with text messages, probably Emily, possibly Loretta, maybe even some of the guests who'd managed to get my number. I turned the phone off without reading them. Justice, I reflected as the Connecticut countryside rolled past the windows, had never felt so satisfying. The modest retiree who'd been humiliated 3 months ago was gone forever. In his place sat a man who'd proven that true wealth wasn't about money. It was about dignity, respect, and knowing your own worth. Some lessons, I thought with quiet satisfaction, are worth $17 million to teach. If you like this story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left.